Has there been anything like it before in the history of the House of Representatives? It's not so much the fact that four major committees are conducting joint hearings, although that is unusual. It's that the hearings have detonated one bombshell after another. What is happening at the so-called Quadcom? And how do we make sense of it all? Hi, I'm John Nery, and you are in the Public Square. Since August, the House committees on dangerous drugs, human rights, public accounts, and public order and safety have been jointly conducting a legislative inquiry into Philippine offshore gaming operators, Chinese criminal syndicates, illegal drugs, and extrajudicial killings. Some of the disclosures carry serious political consequences. Veteran journalist Inday Espina-Varona has been keeping close watch on the hearings. Attorney Ted Te, who is also with the Free Legal Assistance Group, is especially interested in the revelations regarding EJKs. I have asked them to help us understand the explosive disclosures and why the explosions are happening in the first place. Welcome back, Inday and Attorney Ted. Thank you for joining us again in the Public Square.
Hello, John. Hi, Ted.
Hello, John. Hi, Inday. Good to be back.
Thank you again for making time for this. Let me start with a question for Inday. You've been monitoring the Quadcom hearings and we've been following your posts. What disclosure or disclosures have struck you the most?
Well, I think the last one where Garma both faced the families of victims of extrajudicial killings, and then later on would reveal, that's how she helped set up the task force that amounted to, a task force for EJKs. What really struck me most was, number one, when she cried, she likes to cry, when she cried in front of the victims and then told them, sorry, hindi ko makontrol ang pulis ko. I mean, that was like, how dare she, she has been very much in power since Davao, all the way to Cebu, all the way to PCSO. And then she just, tells them, sorry, hindi ko makontrol ang pulis ko. When in fact, all the witnesses, all the persons deprived of liberty, even cops who are higher than her, have all said that, she was one of the most influential. And she herself admitted in setting up the task force that even Leonardo had to go through there, to go to Bongo and the president for a few months. And she also admitted that she could breeze in and out of Malacanang again through Bongo. So it's inconceivable that a police officer who has the ex-president's ear and that of his very powerful special aide could say that, sorry, hindi ko makontrol ang pulis ko. And that's exactly what I think is wrong here, because even to the end, she was now that she's rattled and everything, she's blaming everyone except herself. And all the other cops are also blaming everyone. Even Espinido is blaming everyone but trying to, to get himself out of blame. Yun ang napatuloy pa rin ang kanilang pattern talaga.
I have so many questions about Garma, but we'll get to her in a bit. Attorney Ted, I know you've been traveling for a bit, but what for you have been the highlights of the Quadcom hearings?
I've been actually thinking of using the Quadcom hearings, bits and portions of it, as fodder for my classes, because there's a lot of criminal law aspects, there's a lot of evidence aspects in the hearings. Well, you asked what struck me the most. Ako siguro dalawang bagay, two things. First, the revelation by Espinido of the use of the word neutralize to mean kill. That's the most direct connection between that word neutralize na ginamit in relation to the word kill. Kasi I think it was used as a defense before na neutralize does not mean kill. But now you have Espinido, by all accounts, the one who had direct hand in all of these killings, na ito yung sinasabi niya na yun yung ibig sabihin, no? So that has legal implications, no? Because there is still a petition, a consolidated petition pending before the Supreme Court, where that is one of the issues that has been raised. The second one, no, is really the whole idea of, as you mentioned, the House of Representatives, 4 committees of different, basically, mandates, no? Focusing on specific portions of the Duterte presidency, no? Essentially constituting a legal and political audit of the whole 6 years. No? Kasi dalawang bagay China and EJKs, no? And then yung connecting ano niya is drugs. So very interesting yung ano, although I don't know how this will play out in the end, no? In the end, what is important is really what the report will bear out. While all of these things are going on, we don't know yet what the report of the Quadcom. For committees, 4 chairs, they will write the report. I don't know how it will come out and who will eventually write the entire report. But that by itself is interesting because all of the whole 6 years of Duterte has really been reduced to this, to this hearing, and then maraming ang implications ito legal, so it's political. As Inday said, there have now been many admissions, but at the same time, deflections. No? Oo, nangyari yan, but inutusan lang ako. Oo, nangyari yan, pero sumusunod na ako sa utos. No? And to me, that's also setting up a legal defense. No? In criminal law, there is such a thing as a justification, for a criminal act where the justification is I was simply obeying a lawful order. So of course the question would be, was the order lawful in the first place? But I think there have also been attempts to set up those legal defenses should it come down to that na aabutan sila ng kaso. So maybe those are the 2 things that have struck me so far about the Quadcom here.
Well, a legal and political audit of the Duterte years. No, I think we'll have to get back to that. But maybe we can push that down the road. No, for now, Inday and Ted, let's talk about some of the other disclosures. No, so let's go back to Garma, who was police officer in Davao, and then became chief of police of Cebu, and then eventually was promoted chair of PCSO. But she played a very key role. She says that when the president-elect called her sometime in May, it was to look for the person who will set up what seems like a parallel police organization tasked with this. What other revelations from Garma should we pay attention to? Garma also had an affidavit that was shared a couple of days ago. What I found interesting about it is that she owned up to certain things, but the storytelling is only up to late 2016 or maybe early 2017. I mean, she wasn't even police chief of Cebu then. So I'm reminded of what Ted said, admission but deflection. What are some of the admissions of Garma first that we can pin down?
Well, she hasn't really admitted much. In fact, she hasn't admitted much, John. She has just said that she was tasked by former president to set up a task force. Intriguing doon yung kung bakit kailangan iglesia ni Cristo, by the way, but that's fine. And then she said she set them up, and then nothing, tama ka, nothing. No? She has never admitted to any killing. She has vehemently denied that she was part of the plot to kill the 2 Chinese nationals, the Davao Penal Colony. Wala eh. Wala siya talagang napipilitan lang siya. She has been forced to admit that she filled up, for example, the PCSO, which is also interesting, Jan, with her family members because one was in charge. Actually, I don't think she had much qualification, but she had put her in charge informally of the of the committee that was actually reviewing and approving STL franchises.
Wow.
And the interesting part is that woman was the wife of her cousin who was tagged as the one giving the pesos, 20 million one time, isang bagsak, 30 million one time, parang bayong-bayong, parang
Wow.
Estrada
years.
Sa PCSO, para palitan ng dalat, balik sa kanila. So, while I'm sure she didn't expect that it would lead there, but she was very open in her admission na nilagay niya in key positions actually, not high, but key positions, yung relevant.
But Ted, in her affidavit, Garma did attest that there was this reward system, a three-tiered reward system, which we've had heard before, but this is the first time I think we're hearing an ex-police officer. What is the legal value of an assertion like that? What can be made out of that outside of the halls of Congress?
The legal implication there is that there was actually a consideration. No? In legal terms, we call that inducement. Okay. So if we were to talk about in criminal law, forgive the slight digression. I'll try to make this as simple as possible and not going to gobbledygook. No, but for example, in criminal law, we speak of principals. These are the people who are directly responsible for the crime or the felony.
Okay.
And so, tatlong klase yan, no? We have the principal by direct participation, the one who actually performs the act. And then we have, importantly, the principal by inducement.
Okay.
The one who supplies the intent, meaning siya nag-utos, siya nagbigay ng pera, siya nag-finance, siya nag-bankroll. Yung consideration is important in determining na merong consideration, na merong inducement na posibleng mangyari. At it connects other people outside of the ones who actually performed the offense. Kasi chances are, the ones who performed the offense, this would be the foot soldiers, right? This would be the actual guys out there.
That's right.
Pero yung mga nag-uutos, yung mga nagbibigay ng direksyon and consideration, these are usually the ones who are not revealed, no? And so, by saying that there's a system, no, and that someone thought of a system of considerations and rewards, no, the implication might be that there is a principal by inducement. No? There is someone who actually supplied that consideration. And if people acted pursuant to that consideration, then you have a principal. No? Even if that person never did any act that would, for example, constitute the felony of a killing, for example. No? Even if that person said, I never lifted a finger, I never killed anyone. Pero kung ang consideration ay pumasok doon, then that's a tie, no, that connects the two. Yun yung possible legal implication dyan.
Inday, when she was reading her affidavit, as you said, she likes to cry, but in this particular instance, she was crying, and I thought, watching her, that she was crying because of that particular assertion. It was one blow against her former principal, President Duterte. Do you share that? I mean, you don't need to share that, but how did you read that? I mean, why was she emotional with the reading of the affidavit?
Well, that part, yes. I think the tears were for the fact that she had burned the bridges, that she obviously fears for her life. She would, if I were in her shoes, I would. But it was very important what Ted was saying, the principle of inducement. It was Garma who gave the details, and actually she validated what Espinido. It was Espinido that had earlier said that the two-part system. But there are two strains here. Garma says it came from a Mukling who was special aid. He was in a presidential management staff, partly Bongo's person also. Espinido said something even, I think, was more worrisome. He said that many of their operational funds came from gambling lords and even drugs in the case of Parohino, whom he admitted taking money from him. So because wala nga raw, both of them say, Garma and Espinido, we didn't have money on the ground. So we had to take we had to take money from somewhere. Except Espinido says it came from criminals. Garma says it came from Malacanang.
Well, that may be the same thing.
Yeah.
But there are so many police officers and ex-police officers here, no, who are involved, which raises the question about how thoroughly corrupt the PNP is. I do remember that one of the criticisms levied against the PNP under Duterte was that even Duterte said that something like 40% of the police is corrupt, and yet there are no attempts to reform the police while giving it, additional or even extraordinary powers, with the war on drugs and all that. So let me go back to Garma. Garma was also in a previous hearing accused of masterminding the killing of the PCSO Secretary General or Secretary. What do you think of that, Inday? How does it strike you?
Of course, but I think the former chairman said very clearly that this was because the retired General Bayaruga was against efforts by Garma to give new, after she cracked down and then she reopened, she was giving or trying to give new franchises to friends. And I think it came out in this last hearing. Apparently, many of them were active or retired police officers and their families. So, possible, but there were two guys who confessed that they were ordered. So we don't know what happens there.
So, Attorney Ted, it really seems like Garma is pivotal, at least to this, narration of events, right? And then also she has to contend with the accusation that she masterminded the killing of her subordinate because of some sort of insubordination, and the accusation came from a police officer, right? And then I think was it also Garma who said that she had heard another police officer boast that police were involved in the killing of the Tanawan mayor, right?
Yes.
So two murders, and then the assertions that she made regarding the reward system. Attorney Ted, is Garma here? Is it possible that she can be converted into a state witness? Is that in the interests of the Philippine government?
Well, Inday mentioned something earlier that in her statement, she actually does not admit to much. She admits to organizing it, to having been told by Duterte in May. No? But if you read through her affidavit, the one that she submitted to Quadcom, napakiingat ng language. I was informed. I learned. For the committee, hindi problema yan kasi fact-finding naman itong committee in aid of legislation, di ba? This is not a formal adversarial criminal process. But if it were to go to court, for example, the basic principle there would be, hearsay yan. Wala ka dun. Nalaman mo lang, narinig mo lang, napag-alaman mo lang. No? Ganun ka agad eh. And so, very careful. To answer your question, maybe she does know, but it will take more than that affidavit as written now to convince someone like maybe the ombudsman or the special prosecutor to file cases against police officers or any other public officers that were involved here based on that affidavit. Pwede ba siya maging whistleblower? Pwede ba siya maging state witness? Well, again, two levels, no? The Congress, House and Senate, no, have the capacity to actually make someone a whistleblower, a state witness, no, for any of their investigations. And of course, there's the possibility of being considered a state witness under the rules of court created by the Supreme Court. No? Ibig sabihin lang nun, for that second proceeding, kailangan mo na siya ma-charge. No? Kailangan mo na siya ma-charge bago siya i-discharge as a state witness. Under the rules of the Supreme Court, nandun yung pinaka-controversial that she does not appear to be the most guilty, no? And that her statement could be corroborated, no? And that there is no other direct, no, evidence other than her testimony. So, yun yung kailangan niyang ma-meet bago siya maging state witness in a criminal proceeding. But for purposes of the legislative inquiry, no, she can actually be considered a whistleblower already. No, if she is accredited and she's protected by the House, for example, the Quadcom. No, this brings back memories for me, John, of when I was a very early case. No, when I was starting out as a lawyer, and you and Inday would probably be familiar with this. The Corotong Balaleng expose by Ed de los Reyes and Cory de la Cruz, two police officers who came out, and it was during the Senate inquiry of Raul Rocco, wherein lumabas yun na this group of police officers, no, killed these people in Commonwealth, no. Parang ganun yung vibe na nakikita ko dito, because in Congress, pwede talaga nilang tanungin yung mga tanong na gusto nilang tanungin, no? And without regard to hearsay, for example, because we're not talking about a formal court proceeding. But if it were a formal court proceeding, I think the affidavit of Garma would really have to be a little bit more detailed. And some of the hearsay elements, no, would have to be fleshed out. No? Mahirap kung yung affidavit lang niya ang gagamitin. Baka hindi pumasa eh. Kasi ang dami dun hearsay. No? I learned, I was informed. And then, at the same time, meron siyang statements that are categorical. Leonardo did this. Leonardo knew this. Pero, hindi niya sinasabi kung anong basis niya for saying that. Right? So, if I were the lawyer on the other side, for example, ako yung lawyer ni Leonardo, sabi ko, kagad hearsay yan. No? Kasi, anong basis mo for saying that? No? So, medyo kailangan natin tingnan yung affidavit depending on which proceeding it's being used. Before the Quadcom, I think it's important because she's giving information. No? She's giving information that could lead to other sources of information. But if it were to be used in court, then that's a different thing altogether.
Thanks, Attorney Ted. Inday, do you trust Garma? Should we trust Garma?
Insofar as she's going to give up information that will ease the pressures on her, yes. Will she admit and will she go up and point out to her main patrons? I doubt. I think this is basically Garma trying to save herself. I don't think she's quite ready yet to actually bring down her principles.
Inday, from your long experience as a journalist, do you see the affidavit and her last testimony as actually a means to stave off further pressure on her? It's like, okay, I'm giving you something. It's actually, as Ted pointed out, a little vaguely worded, but it's sensational enough that it grabbed the headlines. Pero hanggang dyan na lang muna.
Parang, I don't know what it is when you bake something and it's fluffy and it's pretty and napaka-dramatic. But when you put your finger through it, it's as of the moment, it's air. Right? Until, as Ted says, he needs to give the details. Until she actually admits her role in it. That's going to be very, very difficult. But John, meron lang akong gustong i-point out kanina.
Sure.
Nabanggit mo yung Tanawan. Ito yung through the all hearings, and I think I did write about it, parang whole of nation approach to crime ito eh. No? Biro mo, sinabi ni Garma doon, pwedeng tumawid ang mga police to do these things. Kailangan lang mag-usap. They just need to talk to each other and they can put them outside of their territories.
I'm not sure now if it was Garma herself who used the phrase Davao template. Was that in the affidavit? Or was that an interpretation? But the idea was that the three-tiered reward system was based on what happened in Davao.
No, I think it wasn't quite there. I'm not sure because the ones who use it mostly are the legislators. But in previous hearings, she never refuted that.
Oh, the Davao model.
Oo, pag sumasagot ka, nababanggit niya rin yung Davao model. So,
Ted and Inday, previous testimonies from Matobato and from Las Cañas, we've heard some of this already. Does this buttress their previous testimony, or does it provide something that might put those testimonies into question? Maybe Attorney Ted first, and then Inday.
I think it does, John. But again, looking for more detail, no? But hearing what I've heard so far, no? I think it does support and buttress Matobato and Las Cañas. Of course, the devil is in the details, di ba? Kasi yung mga maliliit na detalye, which sometimes would not be important maybe for Quadcom, but for a court hearing, no, they might provide opportunity for possible inconsistency if not explained. Yun na kailangan pagtabi-tabihin, which is why I'm saying any affidavit that would be executed for purposes of a court proceeding or even a preliminary investigation, no, to determine if there is probable cause to charge, no, would need to be a bit more detailed. No? And doon makikita kung it fits within the narrative. No? Any prosecutor who will bring a case, no, any case, would always have to have a theory, would always have to have a narrative. This is how it happened, no? And this is who will be able to say that it happened this way. So dito papasok yung various strands, no? Kung si Garma magsasabi niyan, kung si Leonardo ba ang nagsabi niyan, kung si Matobato o si Las Cañas ba ang magpo-provide niyan. Doon papasok yun eh. So it's not just a single one, no? Because again, it's huge, no? Sabi nga ni Inday, parang whole of nation eh. Ang laki, no? And so, yes, I think it will help, no? But I think for purposes of finding out, no, the entire narrative, how consistent the narrative could be, kailangan talagang pagtabi-tabihin yung mga affidavits, yung mga statements to see kung may mga possible points of inconsistency. Yun ang a process to determine what the narrative could be and what facts have already been shown, what still needs to be shown, what still needs to be established. No? Doon makikita yun. But I think it does support earlier statements given by Matobato and Las Cañas.
Inday, your read of Matobato and Las Cañas' testimony?
In the sense that the two men had already given a picture of how thoroughly in control in various branches, ang LGU, no, the local government at the time of Duterte in Davao. Yes, because it actually seems to replicate it. But again, as Ted says, there isn't much detail. Even Espinido has not really admitted to anything. But there is the only ones who actually admitted at first end, sila Casale, were the two cops, where was the cop, I think it was a colonel, he was a colonel who facilitated the murder of the corporate secretary of the PCIT. Sa lahat, yung dalawang yun lang ang tanging umamin na kami to at sila yung nagbuto sa amin. Otherwise, wala eh. Padilla, no. Everybody, no, points to another person, and nobody has actually acknowledged guilt.
Can you help me make sense of Garma's testimony? When I interviewed Matobato years ago, I got the sense that, okay, he knew what he was about, right? And then sometime after that, I was able to interview Lasanas, who was like one of the two closest police aides to Mayor Duterte at the time. And he said, oh, yan lang ang alam ni Matobato. So so it turns out Matobato was like working in one cell, and Lasanas had a higher view, and he knew that there were different groups that were competing for rewards and so on. But do you also get the sense that Garma is actually on a level higher than Lasanas? Because now she's talking about, you know, creating a parallel organization within the PNP, no, talking directly, diretso kay Bongo or kay Presidente. Can I have your thoughts on this, Inday and then Attorney Ted?
Yes, but again, what we have are patterns. We don't have details, you know. We just know that he had direct access, you know. She was trusted enough to be given orders, hindi yung order na pumatay ka, pero yung order na gawin mo itong grupong na to na papatay para sa atin, parang ganun. So yes, and the fact that she was brought to PCSO, ano yun eh, very clear, no? Inano siya at pinarita ka sa PCSO. Meaning na and the kind of money laundering that went on at PCSO, mas dun siya sa, admin ba tawag dyan, o dun siya she would help in logistics or whatever, and sina Leonardo ang in charge of the actual hit guys. So parang, yun sa akin, again, we can only speculate kasi ang labo pa, no? Pero parang ang nakikita ko sa dalawang.
So Ted, essentially my question is she closer to the president than even Lasanas was?
I would suppose so, yes. I agree with Inday that, you know, iba yung utos kay Lasanas, even though diretso din yun, pero iba yung kay Garma. Because, again, she was trusted with conceptualizing this. So, ibig sabihin, may discussions yan. At kumbaga, there was method to the madness, di ba? May discussions yan, ganito gawin natin, at ito yung gagawin mo. No? And so she was trusted enough to do that. No? And so, yes, in a sense, no, she was on a higher plane, even over Lasanas. At insofar as compartmentalization goes, no, mas maraming compartments ang hawak niya. Ibig sabihin, no, mas marami pa siyang alam na kailangan din lumabas. No? Kasi nga, you don't just trust someone, no, out of the blue. You've been newly elected, no, at ito kaagad yung una mong isipin, no, at you just don't trust someone to say, you know, create a parallel force that will allow us to do this, no. Doon pa lang klaro na may plano eh. And you don't just trust someone out of the blue. Ibig sabihin nun, pinagkatiwalaan ito at sa tingin may kakayahan na gawin yan, no, to even think of something like that, no. And so, yes, I think it is clear that she knows more, and the challenge is really to unlock those details. No? As that I don't know if she would be willing to reveal more. At kasi mukhang tama nga si Inday na clearly she's also scared of what will happen. No? Kasi talagang wala na putol na So lian na ng kandila yan Pero I think she knows more. Kasi based on the affidavits, parang teasers lang ang lumalabas Again, good enough to grab the headlines, good enough to investigate more, let the Quadcom continue hearing more, create more agenda items, no, for hearing. But in terms of the narrative, no, hindi pa ganun kaklaro. And I think, no, it's also because the four chairs, no, are not also saying what the narrative so far looks like. No? Yun yung pinagkaiba. Kasi if you were to compare it, for example, to, well, because it was an impeachment trial, yung kay Erap, dito may narrative, no? Kasi prosecution na yun Klaro yun. From here to here, alam mo kung ano yung narrative. ito binubuo pala yung narrative. So again, we can only speculate as to which parts still need to be fleshed out. But I think she does know more. Mukhang may detalye pa yan na alam.
I'd like to ask about the political aspects of this now, but let me bring up one more crime-related question. For Inday, I get the impression that the biggest bombshells have to do with revelations about EJKs and the infrastructure of impunity, ika nga, no? Yung findings tungkol sa POGOs, is there anything there that moved the story forward as far as POGOs are concerned?
I think ang POGO kasi, while of course, obviously they use cops, they use everything. The POGO can tell us exactly just how corrupt the entire bureaucracy was. Pero parang ibang strain to eh. Ito money-making strain talaga to, no? Which led to allegedly the young brothers, no? And others. But I think I see that it's not so much the EJKs. I think what happened was the EJKs scared off everybody. That when they went on, they went to we're going to build these POGOs and everything. Even when people saw things happening, nobody would speak out because nandun na yun. And that was exactly what was the policy, diba? Scare the bejesus out of all of them. The drug list that now we know, Macapagal came into it only after his death. Yun ang linchpin nun eh. Takutin lahat. And then there was the pandemic, the brutality of that pandemic regime also. Dun umakyat na yung mga POGOs. Dahil ako, we're talking crime, ako tingin ko kasi nakasarado yung mga streets eh. Where do you bring the drugs? Who sells drugs there in the streets? So I think they needed something to funnel, to store and everything. And a new model ika nga for money making. I think the key, and I've sort of, kasi tinitingnan ko yung gustong tatanungin, yung sinasabi ng, when the congressman say, pero bantay ka, next time, I know that na, I'm gonna ask you next time. I think it goes back to the PCSO. I think it was Akop who said that last time. I'm going to bear all the names of the colonels here and sino yung pera. Kung saan, because they needed, where do you put the money in all these things? So they needed an outflow for that money. And I think POGOs have a role in that. If, as I think Las Cañas and all of them said, di ba, kaya may drug war kasi may drug lords kami. Yun ang sinasabi nila di ba? So if we were to tie that together, and that's been coming out then sa Congress, then they needed somewhere to park their money and to grow it also, because capitalists in this sense, crime capitalists, will need to get more profits.
I have many more questions related to the disclosures about crimes. So, for instance, Kerwin Espinosa showing up, so even Mayor Mabilog, and being targeted and so on. But I want to go into the political aspect of it now. Ted, I want to go back to your earlier point about this being a legal and political audit of the Duterte years. Can you elaborate on that? And then for Inday, my question for you is, are there political targets? Who are the political targets in the Quadcom hearings? Ted first?
Yeah. I refer to it as a legal and political audit because essentially what we're looking at is hopefully, if the Quadcom pushes it to its ultimate conclusion, it's a report that will make accountable all of those involved in the so-called drug war, the EJKs, and the criminality, and we're now seeing that, yung sabi nga ni Inday, the corruption, in the PCSO, for example, the strategic maneuvering so that meron kang papasok yung POGOs, It's it's really the 6 years, no? Kasi in the 6 years of Duterte, yun naman yung nagsa-stand out eh.
That's
no?
right.
The fear, the killings, the pivot to China, POGOs, no? Yun talaga yun eh. Yun talaga yung 6 na taon niya eh, no? And so I call this as a political and legal audit simply because our systems, no, are not strong enough to charge him yet with anything, no? Wala eh, wala pa diyan eh. Wala pa tayo dun sa aspetong yun eh, na kaya siyang kasuhan, no? We've filed cases against Estrada, we've filed cases against Gloria, no? But even against Pinoy, no? Na pagkatapos ng term niya. But so far, he's the only former president na mukhang hindi ganun kaklaro pa kung ano yung pwedeng kasuhan kung may ikakaso man sa kanya. And so right now, the only audit that can be done really is at the level of the House, no? Kasi hindi pa enough, I think, yung evidence. But hopefully, because there are legal implications to what is going on, it's not just a political audit that's happening. There's also a legal audit kasi lumalabas na ngayon yung EJKs, no? People are talking about it, no? Unfortunately, many of those who are leading the investigations, tahimik sila nung panahon na yun. But I mean, sige, kumbaga, thank God for small favors, no? I'll take it, no? Pero lumalabas na kasi din yun eh. And so, all of these things lead to hopefully a legal conclusion that these people must be held accountable kung sino man yun nalalabas din sa formal report. And again, I'd really love to see a really strong report by the Quadcom. Kasi 4 na committee yan, no? Hindi ito basta-basta, no? Sabi mo nga sa intro mo, no? Has there been anything like this before? I don't think so, no? Other than maybe a committee of a whole by Congress, no? 4 na committee, very strong mandates, each of them chaired separately and conducting what appears to be a coordinated investigation, hopefully into accountability, no? And so ganun yung next nakikita ko. Hopefully this will lead to next steps, no? Possibly preliminary investigations into what crimes have been committed by the Ombudsman or by the DOJ, depending on who is involved, no? And sana yun na yun. So, but that's the reason why I refer to it as an audit, no? You're holding people accountable who people never thought would be held accountable, no? Because during the 6 years, no, nanaig yung takot, yung shock and awe ni George Bush, no? Yun yung nangyari eh, because of all the killings, no? And at some point, impunity really came in, no? Set in. Kasi nga, wala na nagsasalita. Takot na lahat, no? And that was, I think, the method to the madness there, no? And so, if this is the only thing so far that will establish even the groundwork for accountability, then I'm okay, no? I'm all for it, no? Tsaka na natin isipin, nasan ka, ba't ka na nahimik nung panahon niya, no? Kumbaga, kung makukuha natin from them, then I'm fine with this, no? I'm fine with this.
Inday, are there political targets?
Oh, it's been very clear. I mean, I think pag political targets ang pag-usapan, number one, there's Mato. It's a senator. I don't know what's going to happen there. Bongo is a very political target for them. And eventually, I guess, Duterte, although nobody has actually, sinabi lang baka imbitahin, pero hindi ganun kaanghang. You know, they haven't, you know, the language with regards to Duterte isn't that spicy, isn't that fierce, you know. But clearly, they're targeting, however, kung hanggang saan ang pupunta yung accountability na yan. Well, my concern at this point is because I like that, you know, saan man yan umabot. My concern is that uses the word also, no, audit, or political audit, for example. My fear now, John, is because maybe I'm more cynical about governance motives. Kung nahalat, if we look closer, the solution, because this is in aid of legislation, right? The solutions that they have are scary, and I don't think it's going to cut down crime. What does Benny Abante said? Bring back the death penalty. I mean, I do not know how Abante can sit there and listen to all the corruption in all levels of government, levers, pulled up and down by certain individuals, and still say the death penalty will bring down crime. It's not going to do that. It is going to do exactly what Tokang did, which is kill the poor, and and let's protect or make deals with each other, with the fat cats at the top. The second was the money laundering says they will take away the requirement for predicate crimes, and I go like, what's going to, you will shortcuts. They want shortcuts now. But if there's anything that we've learned in 6 years of the Duterte administration, even before that, is that shortcuts are especially what create this infrastructure of opinion. So I think when we all clap and and cheer for everybody who drags tails out of these people, we should remember that baka bumalik din yan sa atin.
Inday, can I ask you to think of a counter, a hypothetical situation? What if Vice President Sara had not burned bridges with the Marcos administration and had continued to enjoy very good relations with congressmen, even former allies like one of the committee heads, Congressman Barbers, for instance? Would there have been a difference, do you think, in the way the Quadcom approached the issue?
Yes. I think this just this blew up because that unity fractured. I doubt, given the record of Congress in not just the Duterte administration, but in all other administrations, basically being the whipping dogs, whipping boy of whoever is in power, I doubt we would have ever come to this. So it was a fractured unity that led to people closing ranks. And I always say, where Congress is concerned, where the money is, that's where the loyalty strikes lie. And so we have this. The Senate, mas mahirap yun kasi we'll give Lisa Hontiveros, for example, matagal na yan talaga, pinupush ni Risa. That's a different story there. But in the House, I doubt we would have even have this if the principals didn't start fighting with each other.
One of the things that struck me about the Quadcom hearings is how, by and large, professional it was. It is well run. Sometimes some of the older folks, tend to ramble, but then you have the young guns who are doing an excellent job, right? What is your read on how this has been, hosted or organized, or if you're on the other side, orchestrated by the majority coalition in Congress? Ted?
Really very good.
Okay, go ahead, Inday.
Okay. The different chairs, magaling ang kanilang, they play against each other, and with each other. I mean, if you look at them, on one side is Ako, former CIDG chief, he's on the opposite side is Stephen Paduano, who is known to everybody as a former rebel. And it's been obvious that they actually they have notes, they divide the topics, they know how to validate each other's points, and then there's the cutesy congressman from Laguna, and then there's Barbards who are trying, and Abante and Gonzales who are trying, at least the parang elder statesmen. So yeah, it's very but it's the younger people. So I think we should watch out for. I'm not sure about the background and why I am cynical of Congress as a whole. I have hopes that we'll see more of them, especially the ones who have more openly really cited the need for respect for human rights. Kasi mas bago ito, and hopefully my changes in the in the way legislators value these things that have always been dismissed as the, as the concerns of activists. Sana may pagbabago.
Ted, let me tweak my question for you. The way that it's being run, professionally run, there are major disclosures. Would that actually end up being in favor of the Dutertes as far as the ICC cases are concerned? Would it be something that they can point to and say, well, justice somehow or other, although it's a legislative process, is being done in the Philippines? Posible kaya, essentially my question is, what is the impact of the hearings on the ICC cases?
At the back of my mind, inisip ko din yun na because, Inday pointed out, sa Senate, iba yung track ni Risa And of course, we know Risa, no? At malinaw yung objective niya at she's not doing this just to grandstand, grab publicity. She's really clear on her objective. And to a certain extent, when Quadcom started, I said, sabi ko, I'm also cynical about Congress throughout the years. No? And saying, ano kaya to? Ploy kaya to na kunin lang yung thunder kay Risa at kay Gatchalian because they were doing a good job with POGOs, di ba? And then, para lang makuha lang, no? And then the revelation started coming. I said, okay, nandali lang. Something's happening. And as you also pointed out, there's a clear organization, no? They're sharing notes, they're talking, they're coordinating. Hindi ito turfing. And it would have been very easy to have turfing problems because, and in the past, it happened pag joint hearings, kita mo may turfing, hindi nag-uusap. No? Ito klaro nag-uusap. And so I think someone is doing the strategy. No? The chairs are all for it. It's clear. They bought in. Kasi pag hindi nag-buy-in yan, makikita mo Now, the effect on the ICC, I don't think it has any. And I don't think it should have any. No? Yung complementarity principle, which people have debated ad nauseam, no? Klaro naman yun ICC comes in as a last resort only because the judicial system, the legal system of the country, of the host country, is incapable of doing the prosecution itself. So we're really talking prosecutions for the EJKs, which is the closest thing to what the ICC is looking at, no? The drug war. Doon papasok yan. Now, is there an attempt to, for example, hold people accountable? Kung halimbawa lumabas dito sa report na to by Congress, no? Na mataas ang possibility or probability na okay, may utos galing sa taas, ito yung mga nag-utos, ito yung mga sumunod, no? At ang aming report ay kasuhan, no? At i-recommend ng Congress, which it has done before, no? To the Ombudsman, commence preliminary investigations. At let's say, binanggit si Duterte doon, binanggit si Bato doon, binanggit si Bongo, or kung sino man yung babanggitin, nakasama doon sa EJKs, no? And the Ombudsman seriously starts a preliminary investigation, possibly, baka sabi na ICC, okay, sandali lang, ibang bagay yan. So far, no one has done that. Nothing has been done to even move that process forward. No? So I don't think at this stage it has any implication on ICC. It's possible that baka hinahabol para lang harangin. But again, ICC is working on a separate track. Kung halimbawa lumabas yung warrant, lumabas yung resolution, may finding na, ito na yung dapat kasuhan, ito na yung warrant, ibang bagay pa uli yun because, of course, we know that issuance of the warrant by itself does not guarantee enforcement. No? And that has happened so many times. No? Si Putin lang mismo nag-travel sa Mongolia. Hindi inaresto ng Mongolia. Ayaw arestohin ng Mongolia si Putin. And, it's the same situation. So, I think it could be a ploy, but right now, I don't think so. Parang malayo Kasi the requirement really is that kaya ng system natin, nakasuhan siya. Which is when the IC will say, okay, in that case, hindi na kami papasok. Kasi kaya nila kung makikita na wala talaga, hindi kaya kasuhan. Walang balak kasuhan, no? Even to the extent of yung cover up, no? Na, sige, mag-imbestiga tayo, yung sinasuggest ni Bongo, for example. Magpa-imbestiga ako kung sino talaga. Hindi pa rin papasok yun kasi we're talking about holding them accountable for offenses which would amount to those crimes that the ICC has jurisdiction over. So yun yung I think kailangan dito. So tingin ko medyo remote.
Thanks, Ted. I just realized we're running over long. There's so many things, so many questions to ask here. So maybe one last question for each of you. But before that, I just wanted to let people know, if you're interested, there are many articles on the Rappler site. Our very own Lian Buan, for instance, has Beyond Quadcom Holding Murder Masterminds Accountable, where there's a summary of some of the most important developments that have been monitored in the Quadcom hearings. Last question for the two of you. Are we dealing with a criminal syndicate here? And what do we do to hold that criminal syndicate accountable? Maybe Inday first, and then Ted.
If there's anything my takeaway from both the Quadcom and even the Senate investigations into POGOs is, in those 6 years, the government was run as a criminal syndicate. What do we do about it? I think when we hold people accountable, and I think as citizens, we also need to look at ourselves. How did we allow, governance to become one of crime, or one that operated like a criminal syndicate? And I think that's when people say that it will take a generation to recover from the exponential growth of the kind of mindset that says, because we are in power, we can do everything. I think that is true. We see that now. When we see police officials up and down and sideways in the hierarchy say, but because he was on the drug list, as if that was enough reason to kill anyone, we will have a long slog. And I think people should make sure that it doesn't happen again, and should block any moves in Congress or otherwise that will make it even easier for that kind of tyranny to happen again. Dahil sinabi ko na to, Dan, tyranny is always at the service of corruption. We don't need tighter rules that will, curtail our rights. What we need are rules to prevent that kind of tyranny from reappearing again in our country.
Thank you, Inday. Attorney Ted?
Yeah, I agree. The last 6 years with Duterte was really run like a criminal conspiracy, a criminal syndicate. No, unfortunately, that was the government at the time, and I do agree that kailangan mahinto yun. Ang ating nagiging problema natin is that it takes a long time for us to get our acts together. No. We barely even started to recover from martial law. Yung nangyari ng martial law, no? Andiyan pa tayo sa never again, never forget. Ito na naman, no? May bago na naman, no? So it takes so long for us, no? Generations na, sabi ni Inday. But it has to start, It has to start, no? And that's why for me, mahalaga yung lumalabas yung information, lumalabas yung katotohanan, no? Because if there's one thing that the disinformation has regime has really brought about, no, it's the lack of trust now on institutions that are supposed to tell the truth, no. So we're cynical about Congress, we're cynical about the Ombudsman, we're cynical about the courts, no. In the end, no, if we're cynical about everything, then saan na tayo pupunta, diba? So at some point, no, that has to be gained back, no, yung trust, yung credibility of these institutions. And so, while yes, at the back of my mind, I'm saying, these are the same people in Congress, no, who were enabling him, no. But okay, they're making this effort to come out with this. So sige, I want to say that okay, if the truth comes out, then I will use that, no? Kasi importante yun na lumabas yung katotohanan. Because what we've seen with this information is that the truth can really be buried, no? under so many layers, no? And so, tayo na yung mapapagod sa pag-unearth ng mga layers na yan. And so, the Quadcom is doing that at least for this portion of our recent history, no? Sana magtuloy-tuloy, no? Sana magtuloy-tuloy. And I think we should encourage that, no? We should ask questions. We should encourage the Quadcom to push further, to reveal greater detail, because I think that's what will really bring about accountability and a stop to impunity.
In a way, this is kind of like the Truth Commission that we wanted at an earlier juncture in our history. Yeah. Thank you, Attorney Ted Te, and indispensable journalist Inday Espina-Varona, for helping make sense of this surfeit, this excess of information. But it is information that we need to come to terms with to hold the past accountable to the future. Thank you. And that's it for us today. The next step for engaged citizens, as always, is to take a more active part in our democracy. Download the Rappler Communities app to join the chat room of your choice. Thank you. This is John Nery. See you in the public square.